Man, killing people is such an inconvenience. Welcome to Walking Through the Word for today. We're in John chapter 19, and we've been looking at the crucifixion of Jesus. And now we're here really in the segment of verse 28 through 37. And there's two things of note that we want to look at today. The first of it is that once again Jesus is fulfilling the prophecies that are laid out, and we talked about this a couple of days ago, and the reality that there are certain prophecies that Jesus could have in theory manufactured, but then there's other ones that no chance. So this is one of those where there would be no chance to fulfill the prophecy because Jesus's legs being broken. It's really pathetic that these guys had this. Just really shows how they really felt about Jesus and how the value of Jesus's life was to them, that they decided, hey, we don't want to leave these bodies up on Sabbath. Heaven forbid that we break the Sabbath rule by doing work, and these guys end up dying on the Sabbath, and then we have to take them down, and we're breaking rules. We can't have that. So let's break their legs to make sure that they die quicker so that we can get this done before sundown. Because remember, the Sabbath begins actually at sundown, not at midnight like you and I think about, but at sundown, okay? So they go around in verses 31. It was the day of preparation. The next day was to be a special Sabbath, the special Sabbath being, Passover. Because the Jewish leaders did not want the bodies left on the crosses during the Sabbath, they asked Pilate to have the legs broken and the bodies taken down. The soldiers therefore came and broke the legs of the first man who had been crucified with Jesus, and then those of the other. But when they came to Jesus, they found he was already dead, and they did not break his legs. Instead, one of the soldiers pierced Jesus' side with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water. Now, the significance of the blood and water, first of all, we talk about the scripture that talks about his side is pierced, which we kind of looked at already. But also the blood and the water mix means that when they pierced his lung was already filled with fluid. He had already suffocated and drowned to death. So this is fulfilling the scriptures that Jesus didn't have control over, and yet once again we see evidence that Jesus is the Son of God. And not only that, but there's kind of this thing. This is the second part of today. There's kind of this thing that people talk about when they talk about the Bible, that hey, these weren't written until many years later after Jesus was gone, and word of mouth and stuff like that. This is not word of mouth. This testimony that is written was written by an eyewitness we know to be John, as in the son of thunder, James John. John, who also is eventually going to write the letters, first, what we call 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, what we call Revelation. John wrote all of these. And he wrote these to tell people about the belief, which we're going to get to here in a minute, or in a couple of days. But John, just to make sure that people say, hey, listen, you weren't there, John actually says in verse 35, the man who saw it has given testimony, and his testimony is true. He knows that he tells the truth, and he testifies so that you may also believe. These things happened so that Scripture would be fulfilled. So John is saying, I am the eyewitness. Now, eyewitness testimony, most police will tell you, and I'm sure I've talked about this before, will tell you that eyewitness testimony is unreliable, that people can misremember things. That's today. Back then, the discipline of being an eyewitness was far different and far more reliable and trustworthy. So when someone said, I saw it with my own eyes, this was a big deal. This would have been the ultimate testimony. Written testimony was much harder to come by. They didn't have forensics. They didn't have that kind of stuff where they would have a Sherlock Holmes or even a CSI come in and check things out. Eyewitness testimony was the key. So John saying, I have seen this and I testify to this so that you can believe, is really some significant statements that he's making. So we can know that the death of Jesus Christ is real. It was based on eyewitness testimony, not just some rumor or speculation. It actually happened. And so we can look at these things and we can have confidence in what John tells us, in knowing that it is true and all the things that he has written is true. But John isn't done yet, and we'll talk more about that next time.